Hi, I'm Dr. Keshishian, and welcome to our podcast series, PPE, Podcast for Psychoeducation During the COVID-19 Pandemic. I'm joined by Judge James Bianco, a Los Angeles Superior Court judge who is assigned to the mental health courthouse. Today, we're going to be discussing the current state of the justice system in California and how the pandemic has impacted the legal process. Hi, Judge Bianco.
Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been a judge for the past 12 years, since 2008. Before that, I was a court commissioner, which is almost the same as a judge, for 3 years. And then before that, I was a practicing attorney for 17 years.
That's quite a long history in the justice system.
I know, it makes me feel old.
What experiences do you think made you interested in becoming a judge?
Well, that's a funny answer to that question. When I was very young, like 5 years old, my hero of heroes was Abraham Lincoln.
Oh.
And so I wanted to emulate him in every single way I could think of, and including I once tried to write with charcoal on the back of a shovel, which my parents thought I was a little nutty to be trying. But, because he had been an attorney and, there were lots of famous stories about his work as a trial attorney, I had it in mind from a very early age that I wanted to be an attorney, and I never really wavered.
Wow. Well, you've definitely made it to the top. How do you think that you got involved with our mental health court? A lot of our psychiatrists, come to your court regularly. How did that transition happen?
Absolutely by accident. It was not something I was looking to do. I had been a prosecutor and a criminal defense lawyer when I was in practice, and for the first 8 years that I was a bench officer, I was in a criminal court assignment, and I never thought I would leave a criminal court assignment, but I was asked to go to mental health. When you get asked to do something like that as a judge, you never say no. So I negotiated that it was only going to be for 2 years, and then I could come back to criminal court. And then about 6 months into it, I realized that I loved this work, and that was about 7.5 years ago. And honestly, I can't at this point imagine leaving mental health.
What is it about this work that you particularly enjoy?
I think what I love about the legal system is working with people. And in mental health court, you're working with a lot of people from all different walks. The people that come before the court, most of the time have a serious mental illness, and I find that really compelling. I think it really brings out my most empathetic side. And a lot of our work, as you mentioned, is based on, or our decisions rather, are based on expert opinions from psychiatrists and psychologists. And I'm so impressed with the doctors that we work with in the court system. They are very bright, very insightful. They're very fair, and I find the subject matter absolutely fascinating.
So can you tell us a little bit about the type of cases that you see at the mental health court, and how is that different than other types of courts in Los Angeles County?
So what we do in Los Angeles is we group most of the mental health related cases in the mental health courthouse, where we have 4 judges. And in the mental health courthouse, we do about 9 different types of mental health related cases, but I think they really fall into 2 broad categories. Either someone is asking to be released from involuntary treatment, and that's, there are lots of different cases that can end up in that category. And the second category is that someone's charged with a crime, and there's a question about whether that person is competent to stand trial. But the common thread in our cases in this courthouse is that most people that are in this court have a serious mental illness and usually need significant treatment. I think part of why I find this so fascinating is I thought, oh, well, I'll be dealing with people with mental illness and they'll all be, sort of roughly in the same category. And I could not have been more wrong about that. One of the things that impressed me right away was there is absolutely no one size fits all. Every person's different. Every person with mental illness is different. They all have different needs. They all have, just like everyone, they have different characteristics, different needs, and so forth. There is absolutely no one size fits all.
Absolutely. And it's in the hospital and at our clinic in general, COVID-19, the pandemic has changed a lot of things, how we treat patients, how we operate. I'm sure that the pandemic has also affected how the courts operate. Can you comment on the changes?
Yeah, absolutely. It has been really a sea change. We shut down for a period of time and left only essential courts in operation. The mental health court was among the courts that were considered essential. As time has gone on, we've reopened courts, but we have really tried to drastically reduce the number of people that come into the courthouse every day as a way to try to help prevent the spread of the virus. So jury trials, both in criminal cases and civil cases, are completely on hold. For us in the mental health court, the biggest change was that a lot of the people that come to our court are either in jail or are detained in a hospital. Most of those people used to come to court where they could meet their attorneys, they could be evaluated by experts, and ultimately we could have a hearing on the case. And we haven't been able to have anyone come to the courthouse just for virus safety reasons since March. So that has caused us to really do a lot of re-engineering of what we do. These are cases that cannot be put on hold. We can't leave people sitting in jail or sitting in a hospital. They're entitled to have hearings. And so we've had to devise all sorts of new ways to have people evaluated and to have them appear in court, mostly virtually.
I mean, you talked about the patients who are in hospitals. How has the civil commitment process changed due to the pandemic?
Mostly because the biggest change is they're appearing by video now. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. This is something that some had advocated for years. And, we would talk about it, and some of the attorneys weren't particularly keen with it. And, a video hearing is a little bit cumbersome in the courtroom. So I think some of the judges, including me, were a little ambivalent. And because of the pandemic, we've been forced to open that door and to conduct video hearings. And I must say, I am a true believer now. I think we should have done this all along. It's still got plenty of glitches to work out.
Sure.
It's a little clunky, and everyone, different people are kind of up to speed at to different degrees, I should say. Mm-hmm. But what it does is it allows patients to remain in the hospital, which is a therapeutic environment, as opposed to coming to a courthouse and sitting in the hallway for hours and having to send staff with them who, need to be with them for hours in the courthouse instead of helping out back at the hospital. And for the psychiatrists or psychologists that would testify in the case, again, they would come to court, they'd be sitting in the hallway. We would be taking them away from being able to see all the patients that they need to see at the hospital. And by doing things virtually, we're able to keep everyone doing what they do as a primary part of their occupation. And then they just beam into court and we're able to have the hearing. And I'm hoping that it's something that we can continue to utilize even after the pandemic is behind us.
Well, that's great. It sounds like there have been some really positive changes that have come out of the pandemic, and you're considering keeping them going.
Sure.
Thank you for commenting on all of these different things. I think that most people don't know a lot about the mental health court and how mental health and mental illness is connected to our criminal justice system. Can you expand a little bit about any misconceptions or things that people don't know that are important for people to understand?
Sure. I think the two key things that come to mind are, first, there are an awful lot of people with serious mental illness that get caught up in the criminal justice system that really don't belong. And so the easy case is someone who gets arrested for trespass. And probably that's a person who was, camped out in someone's alley and really having a hard time with their mental illness and making a lot of noise, or, someone ended up calling the police. And I've spent a lot of time talking to police officers about cases like this, and they are kind of at their wits' end because they want to help the person, but there oftentimes isn't a good solution. And that kind of brings me to the second major point, which is that there really is not enough treatment available for everyone who needs it. What I have struggled with the entire 7+ years I've been doing this work is there are way more people that need help and that are willing to engage in treatment than there are opportunities for treatment. And even when someone is sort of knocking at the door for treatment and the treatment is available, it's not always all that easy to walk through that doorway. I think as a society, we have set up a system that is very cumbersome to access. And that's particularly true for someone with a mental illness, where they may not be all that facile at filling out forms and keeping appointments and things like that. But even if they have great family support, or we're able to support them through the court system, it's very difficult sometimes to penetrate the system and to access care.
Right, agreed that access of care has been challenging regardless outside of the pandemic, and now add a pandemic to it, and now you've added a whole different set of problems. But specifically when it comes to mental illness, that this is not only a medical and physical pandemic, but a psychological one as well. And a lot of people are struggling. Let's talk about different things that are going on in the law. There was Assembly Bill 1810 that went into effect last year. For the audience, can you maybe explain what that is and how that has impacted the mental health court?
Sure. So AB 1810 was what we refer to as mental health diversion. And so this was the legislature, I think, recognizing what I said just a minute ago, that there are many people that are in the criminal justice system that have serious mental illness that really should never have gotten caught up in our system. And so what the law allows is it allows a judge to put that person on diversion. So instead of going to trial or pleading guilty, that person can go to treatment for up to 2 years. And if they complete the treatment and they don't commit another crime, then the whole case goes away. It's been embraced, I think, pretty well by the justice system. I think it's the sort of law that makes prosecutors nervous, but it gives judges a whole lot of discretion. So ultimately, it's really up to a judge to decide whether to grant diversion in a particular case. But again, what we've sort of come up against is a shortage of treatment, because a judge can't grant diversion for someone unless there's a treatment program available for that person. And so once again, we sort of run into this roadblock, which is a lack of adequate treatment resources. So, I and other judges around the state have continued to advocate for expansion of treatment resources. But we as a society haven't gotten to where we are. I think there are a lot of people that are trying, both in the legislature and the mental health community. I think there are a lot of doctors who are really committed to this work. You, of course, are a great example of that. But we are still woefully short on the resources that we need.
Thank you for your explanation. Have there been any unintended consequences that are impacting you and your court?
Well, actually, I think I would put it the other way in terms of, sort of silver linings. The pandemic, uh, hit all of us, and I think we all kind of had to react very quickly. And one of the things that uh, we realized in the criminal justice system very quickly, all over the place, not just in LA, but all over the state, all over the country, is that people who were incarcerated were really in a very precarious place because there's no way to socially distance when you're in a jail. You're in very close quarters with a lot of people, and once the virus gets into a jail or a prison, it really spreads very, very quickly. And so there was a big effort in Los Angeles and lots of other places to reduce the number of people that were incarcerated. And so as a result of a lot of collaborative efforts among judges, prosecutors, defense lawyers, including public defenders, and the sheriff, the county jail population in Los Angeles was reduced from a little over 17,000 to right around 12,000 inmates. And that took place very quickly over a matter of weeks. And the results were really astonishing because the number of cases of COVID in the Los Angeles County Jail, although not zero, is a lot less proportionally than some of the prison facilities that you read about in the news. And I've got to hand it to all the people that worked to make this happen. One of the things that enabled that to happen was the county very quickly did fund a good number of treatment beds, because we knew that a large proportion of the people that are incarcerated in Los Angeles County Jail have serious mental illness. It's something like 40%. Right. So there were like 5,000 people with serious mental illness. And when you consider releasing a good portion of those people, you can't just release them to the streets. You really, creating a whole new set of issues. And so the county, including the Office of Diversion and Reentry, was able to very quickly put together some really good wraparound treatment beds for a lot of people. And so we were able to release people, and we went through this period where we actually had treatment available for people that needed it, which was, as hard as it was back in March and April, dealing with all the things that we all dealt with regarding the pandemic. And, here at the courthouse, it was a really tough time. But we were able to do a lot of really great work in a short period of time, and the kind of stuff that, we only dream about, being able to put literally hundreds of people into good wraparound treatment. And that's any mental health court judge's wildest dream.
Well, to say that has been an interesting time is an understatement. It's definitely unprecedented. Thank you. That's really helpful explanation. I'm sure being a judge is very interesting, but has difficult days as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what you think the most difficult part of your job is?
I think the toughest thing being a judge in mental health court is there's an awful lot of sadness that you see day to day. You see people really struggling in some terrible circumstances. We have people in jail that are, smearing feces on the wall, that are really, really floridly psychotic. We see people that are coming into court that are not in jail, that are homeless, that are also in really bad shape. I talked about the frustration of not being able to connect people that are in dire need with treatment. So there's an awful lot of sadness that I think I and everyone else in our mental health court has to deal with. I think in some ways the defense lawyers have it the hardest because they're the direct contact with the people that come to court. So of all the various stresses and frustrations, I think the sadness is really the thing that is the most challenging.
Do you have any coping strategies?
Well, I think like everyone else, I just try to do the best I can to take care of myself away from work. So, I love spending time with my family. I try to get exercise, get outside, have interests away from the courthouse. And then I think the other thing that's really helpful is, we have networks of judges. I'm connected with mental health judges around California and other judges around the country. And I think to be able to have those connections and to meet regularly and kind of discuss common issues, because we all deal with the exact same frustrations, regardless of where in this great country a judge might be. So it's helpful to be able to sort of commiserate with my colleagues.
That's very interesting, the Judges Network. Thank you. Do you have a specific memory of this time, or actually even outside of this time, that you would be willing to share with us, a special moment so that we could see it from the eyes of a judge?
It's really hard to say that there's one particular memorable experience, but I think what keeps me doing this work and what's really memorable for me is to see someone get better. And I've talked about what dire circumstances people can be in, uh, and to see people rise out of those circumstances. In other words, if we just give them an opportunity to avail themselves of treatment, to see people thrive, that is something that it's the best feeling in the world. And I think seeing that every now and then is what keeps me doing this work. And I think it's what keeps everyone else, the staff, the attorneys, even the sheriff's deputies that work in the courthouse. I think everyone takes a little bit of that with them, and that really good feeling of seeing someone do well. And I think that's really memorable.
Thank you, Judge Bianco, for sharing, and thank you for providing a different perspective on medicine, which we don't necessarily get to see every day. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me.